Clark County School District Police say providing a safe environment for your children is their bottom line. So, why are school cops writing speeding tickets on Nevada's lonely highways? Don't they have plenty to do on campus or nearby? We'll ask a Clark County School District Police spokesman and a critic. Plus, pedestrian fatalities in Nevada are twice the national average, and chaotic driving near school zones often goes unchecked. Who's to blame? The cops, motorists, or the pedestrians? It's all next on Face to Face.
This is Face to Face with Jon Ralston.
Welcome to Face to Face. We'll bring you newsmakers and commentary you won't find anywhere else. In 2007, the Nevada legislature, responding to requests from the community and the Clark County School District, granted school police jurisdiction on roadways adjacent to school district property. But today, Clark County School District Police are operating as full-fledged police officers, participating with other law enforcement agencies in ticketing motorists on Nevada's highways. But are they going too far? And isn't there enough to do closer to school? Join me now, Lieutenant Ken Young from the Clark County School District Police Department, and Victor Jakes. He's from the Nevada Policy Research Institute. Gentlemen, welcome to the program.
Good morning.
Thank you so much.
As you know, Lieutenant, the NPRI has written a couple of pieces suggesting that the school police are exceeding their authority. You were asked about this by this TV station down here in Las Vegas, and here's what you responded when you were asked why school police are writing speeding tickets outside of their jurisdiction.
In our environment, we needed the ability to do patrol because of the properties that we are so spread out throughout the county. We needed the ability to affect traffic laws in and around our schools. Our bottom line is that we want to make sure that we create the safest environment for our students. That's our bottom line.
And I understand that, and that makes sense. But the law in 2007 essentially restricts your activity to the roadways around the schools. What do you think gives you the authority to go beyond that?
Okay, and just to give you a true context of the actual question in that 9-minute interview, what was asked was about our training and why we were training in Category 1, but we're a Category 2 agency. So we talked about our actual environment to include traffic safety around the schools. That's the context of that.
No editing here, sir, so you can say
so
what you need to say.
So that's the context of that particular question.
Okay, but answer the question. In case people don't know, I'm going to just show people real quickly. A Category 2 police officer is defined as school police officers employed by the Board of Trustees of any county school district. Category 1, of course, is what people are generally familiar with. But you're doing Category 1 work, and you're only a Category 2.
When you actually look at what Category 2 says, all it is a listing of agencies. That's all it is. And it talks about officers or departments that are limited in jurisdiction or limited in scope of their duty. For one, our limitation, we don't do murder investigations. We don't do sexual assault, so that creates the actual limitation. As it relates to our primary jurisdiction, we are primarily responsible for the area of the department where we're hired through the school district. That's our primary function. But as Category 1 trained officers, we can act with other officers from other agencies. And we've been doing this prior to 2007, where we've always worked in conjunction with all of the local entities for task force to include gang unit, graffiti task force. We've worked with federal agencies in a lot of specific areas under the mutual aid.
So let me ask you, Mr. Jakes, what's the big deal? I mean, obviously the school district police, they're not quite real police officers. They're Category 2, although they do have Category 1 training. You're aware of that, I know. So what's the big deal? Of course, with the gang problem that exists, with violence on campus, they're going to have to do joint investigations, right?
First, I would say they certainly are real police officers. Their authority is just limited by the law. And the law is very clear that their jurisdiction is limited to school grounds, school events, and adjacent roadways. And that's really the issue here. It's an issue of the rule of law. The law says that the Clark County School District Police are limited in those areas. Now, when you're issuing speeding tickets, that's not a training exercise. The person can't go and say, I don't need to pay this because it's a training exercise. That's the distinction. If it's a training exercise, and it's certainly fine to train to a higher standard, but when you're going out and you're issuing speeding tickets, it's moved beyond a training exercise.
Is the issue to you then that it's going beyond specifically what the law says, as opposed to any kind? Do you think it's a power grab? What do you think's going on?
Well, I'm certainly not going to put any malicious motives on it, but it certainly is going outside your authority, and the rule of law is the bedrock of society, really. As a citizen, I can't tell an officer, I abide by 98% of the law, but I can ignore this 2% of the law. In the same way, an officer can't say, the law applies to me, except I get to take a little bit extra of authority.
Are you telling me if I'm speeding down 93, 95, and I'm worried about the Metro or the Highway Patrol, I also got to look out for Clark County School District police cars,
as officers,
too?
We are out there, we're looking, we're also looking at if you were being accosted, you were being battered. As a school police officer, I'm not going to say, oh my God, I'm a school police officer, I can't stop and assist you.
But that's an extreme example, though, sir. That's not what we're talking about.
As it relates to traffic safety as well. So you have someone that's driving 100 miles an hour on the freeway. We would stop that. Hold on one second, I'm going to make a point.
Go ahead.
Okay. Our officers work with other officers. And in the same turn, officers come in and assist us throughout in the school district as well as a part of the traffic task force. 9 times per year, our officers are a part of a task force. 9 times per year. So it's not that we're out every day doing this. It's 9 times per year, once a month. Now, the other 3 opportunities, the other entities come in and assist us around the schools. So should they not come in and assist because they have a primary jurisdiction?
Well, certainly it's great if they come in and assist because they aren't limited in their jurisdiction. The law says, they have access to schools, they have access to the school roadways, they also have access to the highways. The law does not say that Clark County School District Police have the authority to issue traffic tickets on highways. Their authority is clearly restricted. And, Lieutenant Young mentions, if you see someone being beat, of course the officer is going to go there. But there's a huge difference between responding to something you see and setting up in a speed trap where you aren't responding to something, you're waiting for something to happen.
Along with other officers, though, they're part
Absolutely.
of a task force in doing that,
Absolutely.
correct?
And those other officers,
are you saying that's impermissible by the law?
Well, the other officers certainly have the authority if it's a Metro or a Henderson officer. But, the law clearly says, and I can read it to you if you want.
No, I already read it at the beginning.
Did a great job.
Thank you.
That their authority is restricted to the school grounds and adjacent roadways. They just don't have the authority to issue that ticket.
Why do they need you? If let's use the colloquialism he used, the speed trap setup. They don't need you for that, do they?
Of course, everybody can do what they need to do on their own. We're as a partnership. When you're talking about keeping the schools safe, you're talking about the community safe. Law enforcement, as a culture, as a community, has come together and said, "Hey, we're going to work together to keep our valley safe." Whether that is something that we do in the community, on the highway, or in the schools. Keep in mind, they also come in to assist us. Henderson will come and work in North Las Vegas as a joint task force. North Las Vegas, who definitely has enough to do in North Las Vegas, will come to Henderson. So everybody as a community, we're working together as a community to keep everybody safe.
Well, but it's different for them. There's no restriction for them to go near schools. There is a restriction in law, as Mr. Jakes points out, for you to go beyond the roadways adjacent to the schools. That's the argument he would present.
By primary jurisdiction. What keeps happening is they keep confusing jurisdiction and training.
So you're saying it's understood that because the word primary is in there, that you have secondary jurisdiction wherever you want to go?
If you look under the request for mutual aid, and this is a request for mutual aid anytime you enter into a task force. So whether it be gangs, whether it be drugs, whether it be graffiti, as a mutual aid assistant, we will come in and work across those lines with any entity that requests.
I know you want to say something. It's hard to hold you down, Mr. Jakes, but we have to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk more about this issue. And later in the program, you've probably been reading about all those recent pedestrian fatalities, some of them in crosswalks. What is going on in this state? We're going to talk to a couple experts about that later on. Stick around.
If you want to comment or have missed a program, just go face to Facebook with Jon Ralston, where you can click on links to the Las Vegas Sun, find Jon's columns, his blog, and links to past programs.
Welcome back across Nevada to Face to Face. There have been a lot of pedestrian fatalities lately in Las Vegas and the Clark County area. We're going to talk to a longtime expert and a parent who took matters into her own hands a few years ago. But first, we're talking to a representative of the Clark County School District Police and the Nevada Policy Research Institute about whether the school police are exceeding their jurisdiction. I don't think you'd argue that if Metro or the Highway Patrol called up Lieutenant Young and said, "We need your help in a task force," that they shouldn't do that, do you?
Well, absolutely, because that's what the law says. You know, police officers are charged with enforcing the law. They don't get to set the law or write the law. And the law is very clear. NRS 391 says your jurisdiction is limited. I don't think I've heard any contradiction here. Your jurisdiction is limited to school grounds, school events, and adjoining roadways.
He's saying primary jurisdiction. He's saying
no
primary
jurisdiction in the law. There's no primary. There's no secondary. There's just this is what your jurisdiction is. And I mean, with all due respect, even with good intentions, a police officer doesn't get to expand their jurisdiction. That process has to go through the legislature.
What is your fear here? Is it just that they're not going by the letter of the law, or do you fear something else? Do you think that Lieutenant Young and his friends are trying to create some kind of secret empire of law enforcement?
You know, I'm not going to put any bad motives onto him. I certainly think he's doing it with the best of intentions, but it's still wrong. And there is two things. First of all, fundamentally, it is the rule of law, and that's very important. It's the basis of our society. And number two, I mean, if your attention is somewhere else, and I was talking with Lieutenant Young out in the lobby, and he said, Clark County School District funds are going into these joint task force. So we are spending school district funds to issue traffic tickets on the highway. I mean, I think that's a concern for parents, absolutely.
You shaking your head?
And in the same term, when North Las Vegas, Metropolitan, and Henderson come in to work in the schools, they are expending their funds. As a community, we are working together to ensure the safety. That's our bottom line. It's safety, it's safety, it's safety. That's the bottom line.
But lawmakers get to determine that. You don't get, as an officer, say, you know, it'd be great if I was able to do this, even though the law says you're not able to do that. That's the fundamental issue.
There's an interesting issue here, but we mentioned in the first segment the difference between Category 1 and Category 2. Your officers are trained up to Category 1 standards, and you say that gives them essentially jurisdiction anywhere. But the Nevada Police Officer Standards and Training Deputy Director Tim Bunting told, I believe, MPRA, no, here's what he said. Police Officer Standards and Training sets standards for training and certification, explained Bunting. It is not in post authority, that's the acronym, to regulate jurisdiction of law enforcement agencies. Anyone can train to a higher level, explained Bunting, but that doesn't mean they can effect an arrest outside their jurisdiction. What about that?
Correct, and that is really correct in the way that he's saying that. Now, when he's talking about training, what he's saying is that post does not set your jurisdiction.
Correct.
So Category 2 may train to, and I gave the example of 8 items, where Category 1 trains to 25 items. We trained at the higher level because of our environment.
But what are you saying? Is just because you trained up here doesn't mean you can make arrests up here. You're still restricted to down here.
The jurisdiction has nothing to do with the category. Training. They're two separate houses, and we keep mixing that.
But what he is saying is that you say that because you're trained to a Category 1, that you're able to do what Category 1 peace officers do. I believe that the Deputy Director of Post says, no, that's not true.
We're able to act as a peace officer. So in the event that you have to effect an arrest, you have to enforce a traffic law, as a peace officer, you can do that. Go back and also look at mutual aid. When we've been requested as a law enforcement entity to come in and assist on a mutual aid, you do it under mutual aid.
Well, I mean, there's nothing in the law here about mutual aid. The law is crystal clear about where your jurisdiction
mutual aid is in
extends to. I mean, it's right here. There's no mutual aid exception.
Okay. Well, we'll get him educated on mutual aid, you know, at the end of this.
You'll see an MPRI follow-up piece then. I assume that you've been affected by budget cuts as well as any other agency. Have you? Tell me how badly you've been cut.
Well, we're looking at the ability to hire more officers. We don't have that ability. We're limited in the amount of officers that we can put out. So, for instance, we have over 300 plus properties, and we work on a 24-hour clock. We have 162 officers that will man those properties and those schools. Now, we've written well over 1,000 tickets, traffic-related tickets, from July 1 to now.
I guess the point I'm getting to is you've been cut. There's a ton of problems at the schools, and my daughter goes to a public school. I know something about it. I would think you have enough to do right there on campus without venturing out and doing the things that Mr. Jakes objects to you doing. Don't you? Don't you have enough stuff to do? We have a lot to do,
as well as North Las Vegas has a lot to do, but they assist. You know, we all work as a community, as a law enforcement community. We all work together. We have all been cut, so we figured there's strength in numbers. If we all work together, we also get the job done. So they come in and assist us. We go out and assist them.
Real quickly, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I mean, where does that end? If you let someone exceed the law in one area to the benefit of the community, what's to stop them from doing that again? And that's the real issue here.
I think everyone's made their points. Mr. Jakes, I'd be careful driving home. Lieutenant Young may be behind you, and I think he can write you a ticket. Gentlemen, thanks for being on the program. I really appreciate it. When we come back, we're going to talk about those pedestrian fatalities. We're going to talk to a parent who took matters into her own hands and a longtime researcher and advocate on these issues. Stick around. Well, welcome back across Nevada to Face to Face. Here in Nevada, pedestrian fatalities are double the national average. Chaotic driving near school zones often goes unchecked. Who's to blame, and how can we make roadways safer? Joining me now, Erin Breen, who's with the University of Nevada, Las Vegas' Safe Partnership Community, and Gina Greisen. She started Look Out Kids About, a coalition of public officials, community partners, and parents concerned with school transportation safety. Thanks to both of you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So I know you were shaking your head as soon as you got here, as you usually are. What was it that upset you about what Lieutenant Young said?
That he said in 2007, we're not going to be looking down Fremont Street where there's no schools. We won't be on Boulder Highway where there's no active school. I absolutely believe they're exceeding their authority at the expense of kids. The whole purpose, when I started this task force, the School Zone Safety Task Force in late 2005, was so that we could, I was getting the runaround about who had the authority to issue tickets in school zones, and we pushed to get school police that authority to do that. And it's only supposed to be, as you heard repeatedly, in and around schools, streets adjacent to schools, and here they are out on the highway doing exactly what he said they wouldn't be doing.
But you have no empirical evidence, do you, that they're neglecting their other duties by going out and being on the highways, do you?
I don't know, John. We have all these pedestrian incidents going on, and we just had a kid hitting, in a crosswalk the other day, which is what started a lot of this. There is no reason they should be out on the highways. They're and to their own, acknowledgement here. And I can assure you, there are some legislators that are very upset to hear about this, and there's an LCB opinion.
You claim you text messaged Assemblyman Segerblum was running for the Senate, and he agreed with you.
I talked to several other legislators this morning, and there is an LCB opinion being prepared right now on this, and I can tell you there are some legislators very upset that their intent...
Let us know when that comes out. LCB is Legislative Council Bureau that advises the legislature. You've been looking at these issues. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, can I address the other side of that?
Of course.
As someone who works closely with law enforcement and respects the Joining Forces program tremendously and think that it's had a whole lot to do with us driving our traffic fatalities down in the state of Nevada, I think that Lieutenant Young made a good point that 9 times a year they are part of this multi-jurisdictional task force, which is piggybacked on this Joining Forces program. And it's having a tremendous effect on overall fatalities. And of course, they should be part of the task force like that. It would be crazy for them not to be part of it. But what really was disturbing to me, both as a journalist and frankly as a parent, when I'm reading about these recent fatalities, is that several of them took place in crosswalks. What is going on? I mean, you've been researching these issues. What is going on? People plowing into people in crosswalks. Well, I think that generally speaking, as a driving public in Clark County, we care far too much about ourselves and not the other people, and especially those who are on foot or on bike.
What's different? What's endemic to Clark County that's different than anywhere else?
That's a really good question, because people say, we need the same laws that California has. Well, we have them. It's just how people perceive them. And, the little girls who were hit in the crosswalk, that woman, committed the worst pedestrian error that you can, in that the first car stopped and she overtook that car. And the reason it's so dangerous is because she hit them at road speed. And especially when we're talking about pedestrians, speed kills.
Okay, well, we're going to take a break. I know you want to jump in, as you always do, but I really want to talk about how do you legislate against stupidity, because a lot of this is stupidity. Can you do anything? We'll talk about that when Face to Face returns. Stick around.
Jon Ralston wants to hear from you. Call 702-633-8748. Send an email to Jon at ralstonfacetoface.com.
Welcome back across Nevada to Face. We're talking about the recent rash of pedestrian fatalities here in Clark County and what can be done about it. Can anything be done about it? We also had talked a little bit about the Clark County School Police and whether or not they're exceeding their jurisdiction with a couple of activists here right now today on the program. I want to get back to that issue for just a second, Ms. Greisen, because I know you've been involved in it. Karen Gray of NPR, I asked you about the need for police supervision around school zones. Here's what you said. It's that 20 minutes of chaos, utter chaos, before and after school, when school police are most needed to issue traffic tickets and educate parents on school zone safety. I can attest to that. I drive my daughter to work every morning. Sometimes she drives me. That's a different story. Speaking of utter chaos, but seriously, it is That is the right description. It is chaos right in front of that school.
And it's really only like 15 or 20 minutes before and after school, which is why I was shocked to hear that within bell time, school police are out on these other task force, you know, on highways when they need to be in the school zones, which is why we did that in the first place and gave them that authority. You know, obviously parents are the biggest rule breakers, but part of that is too is that you know, my daughter kept trying to cross the crosswalk and there'd be cars parked on top. But I taught my daughter, when you walk across, you know, the white lines don't magically make sure that you safely get across the street. You need to stop past every car and make sure another car stops.
And that is the point I wanted to ask you about, Ms. Breen. You cannot stop people from being stupid. And you could have every school district police officer, every officer from every municipality look around crosswalks, hiding out there, waiting to get. People are going to do stupid things. You can't stop it, can you?
You're absolutely right. You can't. And I'm certainly not against educating children that they need to stop at every edge, is what we tell them. So, meaning every line. So every edge, stop and make sure that each car has stopped for you. Are they going to obey the law every time any more than motorists are? No. And unfortunately, you're seeing the result of what happens, and the pedestrian loses that battle every time.
Hang on just a second. You brought some stats.
I did.
Talk about, because actually the overall picture isn't so bad.
Right. And so before we started this rash of pedestrian fatalities, we were actually 2 under last year to date. So in 2005, we killed 52 pedestrians in Clark County, and in fact, we were in the top 10 in the nation, where we have been many, many years. In 2010, that number was 34, and it was actually up from 29 the year before. So the message is we are doing better, and the RTC has put so much into place to protect pedestrians. The city, the county, everybody's doing their part. But most of all, the police department's doing their part, and they're going out and, you know, when you were talking about, in the last story, talking about stings, that has such a connotation that we're out to catch people, you know, and it's a bad thing. We're out to give people that all-important ticket for doing something wrong so that they won't do it again.
But you want it to be a deterrent. That's really what you want. You want it to be a deterrent to bad behavior, right? How do you do that?
Well, I mean, education and information all the time, which is why I believe that the school police need to be in the school zones, you know, educating, enforcing, encouraging the good behavior instead of out on highways where they're not supposed to be.
It's not mutually exclusive. I mean, there are a lot of them. I've seen the school police out in front of my daughter's school. I've seen them cite people. Haven't gotten me yet.
That was the whole point. And I'd like to think that we're doing better, John, because in 2005 we created that coalition of all the agencies, which I invited Aaron to be. I would like to think that, you know, that starting that coalition had a lot to do with it, and getting everyone in the same room and no longer allowing people to point the fingers and saying, oh, that's not my job.
You were frustrated, right? You were just
I was beyond frustrated.
Because you were near your daughter's school, Tommy Asso, I believe, and yes. you saw that utter chaos. 3 kids in 4 years in crosswalks around a very small residential school.
So this goes on all the time. My daughter's no longer obviously in elementary school, but this is a perpetual problem, which is why, you know, it was so important to give that authority, that limited authority to school police to be doing that, and also to create this coalition and all these partnerships to constantly be educating and enforcing and relying on the media to keep the message going and keep it out there.
Gina Greisen, I'm here for you. We're educating the public today. It is a very important issue and a very scary issue. Thanks to both of you for coming on the program. I really appreciate it. And on the next Face to Face, more of the issues that matter to you from people in the know, right here on Nevada's Information Network. Thanks for watching, everybody.